Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair.
Oh, hello there. We are the Movie Meisters. I'm Matt.
And I'm Kenneth.
And we just saw Alien Covenant, the first sequel in the popular Prometheus franchise.
No, that's right.
Kenneth, what is Alien Covenant about?
If you've seen both Alien and Prometheus, that at the beginning. It's about a group of colonists who, on their way to their destination, they're hit with like a solar flare or something, and they're woken up prematurely. They find out that there's a planet that can also sustain life that's on their way. It's closer, so they decide to land there. David from Prometheus is there, and there's all kinds of chaos that ensues.
Yes. Alien Covenant is a corporate safety video from Weyland Yutani about how you should always wear a helmet.
That's the funny thing, too, is because in Prometheus, they take off their helmets and everyone's just like, oh, what a bunch of idiots. And then this one's like, they don't even bother with the helmets. It's great. Let's see, for me, Matt, I think this movie would have been better titled David v. Walter, Dawn of the Black Goo. This movie has 3 parts, right? It starts off with the typical Alien thing where you're introduced to the crew, they want to do something. In the first Alien, it was truckers. In Prometheus, it's a bunch of archaeologists who want to find our origins. And in this one, it's a bunch of colonists who want to find a place to settle. This is something that Ridley Scott does pretty well. We've seen it before, but he does it pretty well. He develops the characters kind of, we get to know them. Then we move into the second act of the movie. So they land and they encounter a bunch of creatures, and then this David, who is from Prometheus, who's a robot, meets them. And so this is like an hour or so into the movie. And that's when the movie gets, I would say, actually very good. Everything that's going on with David's character is interesting. So I was impressed, like, with the very first scene. It shows David interacting with Weyland, and they're discussing the idea of creation and David's own creativity and his wonder about whether he's superior to human beings. It's like, well, you're my creator and I serve you, but aren't I superior to you because I can't die? You're going to die, but I'm not going to die. That theme that continues through all of David's arc is interesting.
Yes. I think if you strip out from this movie things that have been in several previous Alien movies, such as investigating weird alien life forms when you shouldn't and getting attacked by them, and shooting aliens out of an airlock using heavy construction equipment, right? Like things that are just weirdly the same. Again.
Yes.
If you just take all of it out, it's kind of this interesting story about the android characters. It's not even a plot about, oh, you know, they're like an honorary human. Good job, buddy, you did it. Like, it's actual moral decisions and things that they're having to go through. And I wanted more of that. I almost wish that they started off with them arriving on the planet, and then maybe they do a bunch of flashbacks to David's past or whatever. But yeah, I don't make it about that. The best scene in the movie was David teaching Walter how to play the flute. That was like fucking amazing.
That was great.
It's nothing to do with aliens.
That's right. This is the first Alien movie where the aliens are the least interesting thing in the movie. We had the first 2 acts. First act setting up the characters. Second act entirely about David and Walter. And then we have the final act, which is basically Alien, but condensed into like the last 15-20 minutes. And that was the most boring part for a plethora of reasons. But this part with David and Walter, so he points out that he's superior to humanity. Therefore, engineers who created humanity are even more inferior. And then he figures if he creates something, it's more perfect than he is. It's logical what he wants, at least from his perspective. Michael Fassbender is listed first out of anyone in the credits. We do have that character, the Ripley archetype, with the character Daniels, but really the main character of this movie is David. Technically the antagonist, he's putting these people through horrible things, but we're seeing everything from his perspective.
His motivation is really interesting, but it almost feels like everything that happens plot-wise with what he's attempting to do is a way of reconciling Prometheus with the rest of the series.
Yes,
right? So you need a way of explaining why the aliens look weird in Prometheus and why it's a chemical weapon and not what we're used to. It just sort of smooths out a lot of that, although not quite all of it. Prometheus is the only alien movie with zombies, so I guess
that's true.
Still a few unanswered questions. The plot isn't really about that. Like, he betrays them at the end, I guess, but his character arc, it's not structured around in a way that I kind of wish that it was.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's some great things in that second act of the movie, as you're pointing out, the flute scene. And I think that's kind of the biggest problem with this movie. It tries to be both a Prometheus sequel and an Alien prequel. It ultimately ends up not doing both all that well. Like, at the end of Prometheus, we had this idea, like, we're following the continuing adventures of Elizabeth Shaw, and she's going to find out who created us and why they want to destroy us now. We don't get any answers to that. She ends up being alien cubed, just like Hicks and Newt. She's killed off screen, and she's actually, like, dissected and torn apart by David, even though he said he loves her. And we sort of get the idea that he does. He makes a grave for her, and you get a lot of contradictions like that make David's character more interesting, because he's supposedly this perfect android who's aiming for the perfect creation, but even he makes mistakes like a human would. He quotes the poem Ozymandias, and he attributes it to Byron, even though it was by Shelley. He's a flawed character in that sense, but he's also like a mad scientist who's justifying everything he's doing.
Yeah, it's a great performance because not only is it two different characters that look the same, which is always tricky, but David he kind of changes personalities at the drop of a hat, you know. He composed and disinterested, and he can suddenly get very angry. There's a couple of moments where he tricks people by being very kind of tender and caring. The development of his individuality is also development of some kind of sociopathic problem. It almost reminds me of the Terminator 2...
T-1000.
The T-1000,
yeah.
Because the villainous android robot person is becoming more human, and then that's a bad thing, right?
And they sort of parallel the Arnold character with Walter, because he wants to save Daniels, and David implies that he's in love with her. A little more oblique, I guess, but there you see the contrast between the two characters. I never thought I would see a robot kung fu fight in an Alien movie, but we get that here.
Yeah, we do. I like the robot kung fu fight, mostly because of the setting it takes place in. I feel like cavernous obsidian chambers are a really good background for the character of David. They're very sparse, like they're either completely devoid of anything, or it's filled with some precious object that he's acquired over his long stay there, and it feels like he really doesn't need anything. Like he's just this master of this domain. And of course, it also reminds me, there's this famous picture of Steve Jobs early in his career for some magazine where he's in his apartment, but all it is just a hardwood floor and a lamp, and he's just sitting like in a lotus position in the middle of this empty apartment. It's very much that way. He has nothing superfluous. All that's there is him and his research, and he's very single-minded. It's great. And then you watch him get beat up in this big cavernous room. It seems like he's getting what's coming to him.
Funny you should bring up Steve Jobs, because Fassbender actually played Steve Jobs in a movie. But
well, I've not seen that movie.
Yeah, me neither. Well, I don't know if I want to say I like it, but it is a thing that's sort of missing from movies. Is like, oh, here's this object and it comes back. Daniel's character, she has this nail that she wears as a necklace because her husband, played by James Franco, dies early on, but they were going to build a cabin. He dies, but she keeps the nail as a memento, and she uses it to stab David in the neck. He actually references Blade Runner. He says, oh, that's the spirit, or something like that. Harrison Ford's fighting Rutger Hauer. You pointed out to me that there was an inconsistency there.
Well, I don't think it's an inconsistency. I think it's an intentional misdirection. You were saying that it's pretty obvious at the end where they're trying to make you think that Walter has come back and killed David, but they want there to be some doubt in your mind, because cinematically, it's probably David. So they do a couple things. David's voice was messed up at the end of the fight, and he's reaching for a knife. When David comes out dressed as Walter, he has a cut on his face as if he is Walter, and David cut him with a knife, and his voice is no longer messed up, and he doesn't have the stab wound on his neck, right? So these are all things where you would think, well, okay, maybe it really is Walter.
Right.
But they never explain any of those things. So I don't know. I guess the technology to fix him, because he was only a head before and he got better, so maybe he just used that.
Hold that there. Hold it.
As soon as it's revealed that one of the characters is infected with a xenomorph, we know it has to be David, because it shows him fixing his wound. The guy had acid on his face, and then David pulled that off and then put a new thing on his face, and then all of a sudden a xenomorph pops out of his chest. And this is why I want to say that the last third of the movie is boring, aside from the fact that it's a repetition of what we've seen before a number of times. It lacks suspense because at this point we know that there's going to be a reveal that Walter is actually David. So them fighting the alien, it seems like he's sort of helping them. We know that it's going to turn at some point. So this whole time they're fighting the alien, I know they're going to beat it, and I know that they're going to survive. It ruins that part of the movie, and it's also not very well done. I mean, they emphasized in the trailer, oh, the alien attacked this couple making out or having sex in the shower, kind of like B-movie slasher territory. So that whole ending sequence really took the air out of the movie for me.
Yeah, you have to wonder what David's motivation is during the last part of the movie.
Yeah.
Unless I guess he believes that the alien will kill him also. When it's born, he kind of poses and it mimics him, almost like he understands something fundamental about biology and behavior, that he would be able to control it.
Yeah.
So why would he want to help them kill it, especially when he lets them discover at the last moment that it's him?
I was kind of wondering that too, but maybe, he's like playing the long con, because at the end we see him posit 2 face huggers among the embryos. Better to sacrifice the one so that I can create more, which kind of ties in with the themes of the movies where I have to kill something, even something I have affection towards, to create something better.
So you're saying he's not going to experiment on all the sleeping colonies. He's going to actually allow the colony to start up, and he's like playing a super long game where like those embryos are there,
right,
to infect like a living population on the new planet. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. I guess we'll see in the sequel. Other reviewers have pointed out that maybe they're just going to pull in aliens and there's going to be wall-to-wall aliens. This movie is technically a sequel to Prometheus, and it's technically a prequel to Alien, but it doesn't tie in with either very well. It took the best part of Prometheus, which was David, and emphasized him. The part about the alien is not very interesting, and I don't think either film, Prometheus or Covenant, ties in with Alien very well, because one of the best aspects of Alien is that everything is quote-unquote alien. We don't know where the space jockey came from. We don't know where the alien came from. Everything visually looks so strange, like the horseshoe ship and everything. It's not a design that we would expect, but oh wait, it turns out they were created by proto-humans. Everything that's designed there just happens to be weird. The idea that a human-made android created the xenomorphs takes away from part of what made them interesting in the first movie.
I will say for the last act of the movie, I liked the airlock sequence in the following way. It was extremely pretty. Pieces of glass floating around in zero gravity and like sprinkled evenly everywhere. It was beautiful. But kind of inappropriate for that sequence. I think the whole point of that sequence was the move, which is set up in front of the alien, jump down, alien gets hit by it, and that kind of happens so quickly at the very end of it that it's almost like, oh, she did a thing, and it's not a lot of suspense there. It's just a lot of watching. What was it, giant forklifts slowly move across, and it looks very nice. It's just kind of like,
definitely can't fault this movie for the visuals. Ridley Scott knows how to make a very, very pretty movie. He did it with Prometheus, and he did it with this.
'Cause I feel you. I know you know. Fear is knocking on our door, and love is calling us for sure. There's no reward.
What is your name?
Walter. We are Walter.
This movie feels a little more businessy. I see more of the business side in the creation of this movie. Audiences did not like Prometheus. They're pining to see the xenomorph again. Oh, and this one part of Prometheus everyone really, really loved. So we're not going to continue the plotline from Prometheus, because we like that. We're going to emphasize David because everyone loved him. and everyone wants the xenomorph back, so we're going to do all these things with this movie. We're going to do our best to please the audience. That part of it kind of popped out at me a little too much in this movie. If this was an entire movie about David being a mad scientist and interacting with another android, teaching him how to play the flute and kissing him, then this would have been an amazing movie.
Oh yeah, I was like, oh wow, this is gonna get real weird. This is gonna be great. But it didn't. It was just a trick.
Yes.
It's like that part in Ghost where what's his face is in Whoopi Goldberg's body.
Right.
I was like, oh, this is gonna get weird.
Yeah.
There too, I was sorely disappointed.
Oh, that would have been so great to see her dancing with Whoopi Goldberg, but oh well.
Or an actor kissing himself.
Yes. One of the things that sort of killed the suspense for me in this movie was we know what's happening and we're waiting for the characters to catch up. So I already talked about that with Walter's actually David scene. But there's also earlier on the captain is interacting with David and then he sees that David's actually commanding some like alien type creatures. And he says, tell me what's going on. First things first, the captain does not go and get other people as backup.
And he listens to what he says.
And he listens exactly to what David says. It's like, oh yeah, you can look in this egg. It's safe.
Yeah, lick it.
Yeah, exactly. So after that happens, the captain gets infected. He has a xenomorph birthed out of him. Then we're waiting for the other crew members to catch up and discover what happened. So there was a lot of that going on, which kind of killed the suspense for me.
I think that happened in editing a bit too, because there's one character who dies and gets her head cut off. And I think 3 different people, or at least there's like 3 different shots where they show the head floating in a pool of water. And it's just kinda, how many people are going to stumble across his head and like have this dramatic reveal that she's dead? We only need to see that head floating there one time.
Yes. So we discover that the xenomorphs come about because David's been a mad scientist and he's messing with the black goo and trying to create the perfect creature, right? In this one we have like a sort of proto-alien. Instead of having a face hugger get on your face and then it bursts out of your chest, there's just like these spores that fly out of a very small egg. If you inhale it or if it just gets in your ear or something, an alien will pop out of you and it'll grow really fast. Isn't that the better creature?
I thought about that too, and my reasoning was this. The virus is just designed to like wipe out all organic life, right?
Yeah.
So it just rewrites the host DNA into like whatever. But then David becomes obsessed with making the perfect creature, right? So he doesn't just want like a set of DNA that will kill as many things as possible, right? So he's not that Doctor Who villain whose name I'm now forgetting. Maybe we'll put an image up of the one I'm talking about. Who would assent to the proposition, if I could invent a bacteria that would wipe out all life except for itself, I would, right? He wants like superhuman. He just using this thing that can kill everything as like a basis for that. And I think it almost implies like that the aliens are very intelligent too. Like more intelligent than maybe they had maybe Jurassic Park raptor intelligence before, and now maybe superhuman intelligence possibly.
Well, you remember that scene in Aliens. They got the power.
And we are treated to Alien-O-Vision in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Which is not the same as Alien 3 Alien-O-Vision.
That's true.
Which means they're going to have to explain that in another prequel sequel.
Sure, yeah. Oh, so many inconsistencies. Oh, it's like they didn't plan for it.
I didn't like those bits. It's just like putting some brown shit on the screen. I don't know. I'm sure they spent a lot of money on it, but it was just unpleasant.
Yeah, I agree. I would have preferred the wide-angle lens that they used in Alien 3. Let's compare this movie to Prometheus. So, which one did you like better, and what's your reasoning for it?
I like this movie better than Prometheus. Prometheus had the double mumbo-jumbo problem where it was just like, this black goo is every thinkable science fiction cliche crammed into one, and we just want to put as many possible weird deaths in this movie. I didn't like the whole aliens are a super weapon thing. It felt like it was trying to be Lost. Like it wanted to set up a bunch of mysteries and not answer them. And I feel like they had the kind of right instincts, which is part of what makes Alien series good, is that you don't understand. Or to give a better example, the art of H.R. Giger is often very good because hard to process visually exactly what it is and what's going on. That's kind of disturbing. Like, oh, is this a machine? Is this a mountain? Is this like a sexual orifice? Like, what exactly am I looking at? But the thing is, it's a good painting first, or it's a good horror movie, right? And then it's like, oh, but none of that was explained, and that kind of served the horror movie. It's not like the plot of the horror movie is that there's no explanation to the plot. I think that's like heavily lampshading what you think is good about your series, and you're forgetting to actually like do a movie in the meantime.
Ah, yeah.
Anyway, this one at least had one solid act that I thought was really good ideas, really good performances, the set design, perfect. You know, I really liked that part, and so I gotta give it to this movie. Even though, I mean, seriously, like, knocking an alien out of an airlock with a giant yellow piece of construction equipment.
Yeah, right. It sounds, it's awfully familiar. I'm gonna agree with you on this one. For me, it's just a matter of math. With Prometheus, it had a great first 1/3 of the movie, and this movie, I want to say it had a pretty good first third and an excellent second third. When this movie goes off the rails for me, it's much later than when Prometheus goes off the rails for me, even though Prometheus does have probably a more memorable scene in the surgery scene. Pretty much everything else was kind of nonsensical and seemed like we're making this up as we go along. Damon Lindelof, Covenant, is not intending to answer these questions because it's more of an alien movie. Which is also kind of ironic because in my Prometheus review I talked about how it does much better as a monster movie than it does as like this philosophical discussion. Whereas with this movie I wish it was less of a monster movie. If they cut out the alien completely and just focused on David and his thoughts on humanity, I would have liked this movie much, much more.
I have a theory of why the creators wanted to kill humanity.
Okay, please.
So the virus overwrites the DNA and things sprout out of the people that kind of look like the people.
Right.
And then I guess in Prometheus we saw a whole bunch of crazy creatures because that was maybe the fauna of the planet they were on. Like it's just a coincidence that looked all crazy. And so maybe, just like in this movie, how the alien that comes out of a person kind of looks like a person, the thing that would come out of the creators kind of also looks like a tiny version of the creators, right? So they know about the virus. So when they wake up, they're like, oh shit, it's some crazy virus thing.
Right.
Kill it.
Okay, yeah. Interesting random note. I remember, we were both going into this movie. They have the androids, right? A, B, C, D. So we have Ash, Bishop, Call, and David. Oh, they messed it up because now they have Walter. He should be like Edward or something. But apparently that was deliberate on their part for two different reasons. One of them is that the two main producers of the entire franchise who helped write the original film, David Giler and Walter Hill, so it's David and Walter. And also, Michael Fassbender is playing both androids. D is 4 letters into the alphabet. W is 4 letters from the end of the alphabet. So
We're gonna get into numerology pretty soon.
Oh yeah, totally.
Any name will be justifiable by some means.
Exactly. Yeah, just thought I'd toss that in there. Let's see, for anyone who hasn't seen Alien Covenant and is a fan of the Alien franchise, would you recommend it?
Yeah, I think the androids were always an interesting aspect of the movies, and they get their own subplots that touch on the ideas of what being human is like, and this takes that further and is executed extremely well. It's just there are parts of it that are more of the same.
I would also recommend the movie, but not so much as an Alien prequel or a Prometheus sequel. It's really its own thing. It has this very interesting story about the androids.
Let's talk about religion in this movie.
Sure.
Prometheus is kind of about religion, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, God created man. Or did he?
Right.
Maybe it was aliens.
Yeah. And of course, Elizabeth Shaw, even though she's a scientist, she's a religious person.
Right, so this movie, they kind of take that and run away with it. They do a way flashback to Wayland, and he's saying, I believe that there are the creators out there, and we gotta go find them. The new captain who survives the solar flare, whatever, keeps saying that he's a man of faith all the time. David makes several explicit references to various religions. There's some Milton in there. He's like, oh, you gotta decide, Walter, between ruling in hell and serving in heaven.
Right.
There's a theme of the gods entering Valhalla by Wagner. And then, when he's doing that, he's missing a hand, which I think is a reference to the Norse pantheon, because Tyr is missing a hand because it gets bit off by Fenrir, I think. Anyway, he sacrificed his hand. So what's going on with religion in this movie, Kenneth?
I think that they put it in the movie because it was in Prometheus and they sort of needed to make it a sequel. They didn't really emphasize this much in the movie, but they released material prior that was actually deleted scenes, and they put it as a prologue.
He can be a jerk.
Why are you speaking so loudly? He's right there.
I know, he can't hear me. He's drunk. Again, he's always drunk.
His wife is even drunker. Have you seen that?
I heard.
The Covenant crew, it consists entirely of couples, which may or may not have come through when we watched the movie. And I think it's sort of a missed opportunity, even though they did play that up with Danny McBride's character. But the fact that some characters care more about the other could have added a nice element to the movie. But, obviously that's the animals went in 2 by 2, Noah's Ark. For the captain specifically, that's where I think, oh yeah, we tossed this in because it's a Prometheus sequel. We needed a character who had faith, who sort of shared Elizabeth Shaw's philosophy. So we have the second captain who's, oh, nobody respects me or trusts me because I'm a religious person. Well, no, that's not why they don't trust you. It's because you an inexperienced captain. And no one brings up the fact that he's religious,
Yeah, he says that.
Yeah.
But you don't get that from the other characters.
Yeah.
They totally could have gone this way, and I would have respected that if, in the future, everyone's just assumed to be an atheist and being religious is weird, and they're picking on the captain. But he just says it.
Right.
That's it.
They could have turned that, so let's say the other characters are not atheists. I mean, as it was, I think one of the characters actually had a Star of David on a necklace, so I guess one of them was Jewish or something. That paranoia could have played into the captain's character. Maybe he has an arc where it's he gains confidence or he realizes that his faith is not a detriment. That's what happened with Elizabeth Shaw. She discovers the engineers, but she still puts the cross back on. It could have been something like that for him, but his character just dies, and in fact his faith is what gets him killed because he decides to have faith in David, who's like, don't worry, you can trust me. I know you just saw my creature kill one of your crew members. So I don't know what, apart from the Noah's Ark comparison, I don't know what this movie is really trying to do with religion, honestly.
I think it might be there for irony, because he's all about faith and how it's going to work out in the end. And then it's the opposite of working out. Now the success of the colony is the success of David's evil plan of spreading his wacky aliens throughout the universe.
That's true. And that would tie into the fact that Elizabeth gets killed by David. She put her faith in David.
And so this is another thing I thought should have been part of the... So I really like the whole Walter versus David business. I am one of the few people who liked Alien 3 and the decisions that Ripley has to make in Alien 3.
Yes. Yeah.
This is a similar situation, I feel like. I feel like Walter has a big ethical decision to make in this movie that is not addressed at all, which is what to do about the ground crew getting rescued. Because he says in the movie, I'm not going to let you off of this planet. But what he decides to do is punch David in the face. But really what he should be doing is running over to the crew and telling them, we can't leave this fucking planet. Tell the ship not to pick us up.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't risk the alien getting away. And then maybe they're going to refuse because, it's the whole husband-wife plot. There's a conflict. And then now Walter has a vision. Do I have to, murder all of my best friends to prevent David's crazy alien from getting on that colony ship?
Ah.
Anyway, that seems like a huge missed opportunity. That's what I want.
Oh, yeah, totally.
That's the movie that I desire.
Yes. For me, in general, the Alien series really is just those original 3 movies. You get 3 great filmmakers making 3 different kinds of movies, but they all follow a series of events about our main character, Ripley. Those 3 movies tie together so well for me, and, all this stuff is, additional, fun material, except for the second Alien vs. Predator was just a horrifying mess. It was one of the worst things I've ever seen. All of these at least have something to offer, but for me the series really is just those original 3.
So now I'm imagining a scene where Walter's voice box is broken and he's trying to prevent people from getting off the planet, and then they think that he's David, and then they kill him and take David with them thinking that he's Walter.
Oh, Matt, you should have written this movie, man. Honestly. Those are our thoughts on Alien Covenant. Hope you enjoyed it. My name is Kenneth.
I'm Matt.
We are the Movie Meisters saying...
Cinema is not a slice of life, but a piece of cake.
Thanks for watching.
Sleep tight. I'll wake you when we arrive.